My name is Tyler. I am 14 years old in this story, and I want to tell you about the day I realized that a stranger I met online was not a stranger at all. He was a wanted man, and he had been inside my house sleeping in my room 10 feet away from my parents for an entire night before any of us knew. This happened in the early days of internet chat, before everyone knew the rules, before everyone knew you were supposed to be careful. Some of us learned the hard way. If you watch True Scary Stories, subscribe before we get into this. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from tonight, because I have two stories for you. Two people, two very different situations, both of them about what happens when someone online is not who they say they are. Let me start with mine. I grew up in a small town in the Midwest, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and very few people shared my interests. I was into certain kinds of music and films that most kids around me had never heard of. I was also 14 and had recently started to understand something about myself that nobody in my town seemed equipped to help me with. The internet felt like the only place where I could find people who understood either of those things. This was the era of dial-up connections and AOL Instant Messenger. Your profile was visible to anyone on the platform. Strangers would message you based on what you listed there. It was considered normal. Nobody thought of it as dangerous. It was just how you made friends online. A guy named Steven messaged me one afternoon. He was 16, he said. He had red hair and a wide, goofy smile in his profile photo. He said he lived nearby. He had been kicked out of his house by his parents because he was gay. He lived with his older brother. He had his own car. I want to be honest about why all of that was appealing to me at 14. I did not know any gay people in real life. Not one. I had come out to two close friends and to my mother, and my mother had not responded well. I felt completely isolated. Meeting someone nearby who was older and seemed to have found a way to survive being who he was felt like finding a lifeline. We talked for weeks, hours of messages back and forth. He was funny and easy to talk to. He seemed to understand things about my life without me having to explain them. We decided to meet up. I knew my parents would never allow me to meet someone from the internet, so I told them he was a mutual friend of someone they already knew and trusted. That was a lie. I lied to make it work. He pulled up on a Friday evening in a beat-up pickup truck. He looked exactly like his profile photo. Red hair, goofy smile. I felt immediate relief. He was real. He was who he said he was. We drove around. We got food. We went to a guitar store, caught a movie. It was the best evening I had had in a long time. By the time my curfew was approaching, I did not want it to end. I asked if he wanted to stay over. He said sure. I had a trundle bed that pulled out from under mine. He slept there. We watched a DVD and both fell asleep. At some point in the night, there was a loud knock at the front door. My parents woke up and answered it. A police officer was standing there. He was a friend of the family. My dad was a retired cop. The officer told my parents they had received an anonymous tip. Someone in this house had been communicating with a wanted man. My parents came into my room. Steven was asleep a few feet from where I lay. The next morning, Steven and I went for a drive, just riding around normal day. Then a car coming the other direction hit the brakes and turned around hard and started following us, horn going right behind us, close and aggressive. I was screaming at Steven to slow down, asking if he knew who this was. He did not say a word, just drove. It became a chase that lasted several minutes before he finally pulled over and jumped out of the car and told me to follow him. The driver came straight toward me as I got out. He was a man in his 30s. He had his fist raised and he stopped at inches from my face. He was shaking with what I could tell was controlled rage. He told me that my friend was actually 21 years old, that he was his boyfriend, that if I wanted to continue having a life, I needed to stay away from them both. He took Steven and drove away, left me standing on the shoulder of a road I did not fully recognize. I walked home, I did not tell my parents what had happened. I locked myself in my room and cried. I want to explain what it felt like. Not the fear of the man who almost hit me. That was real, but it faded quickly. What did not fade was the specific devastation of finding out that the person I had trusted, the person who felt like a lifeline, had been lying to me the entire time. Every detail he had given me about himself was crafted. His age, his situation, his story. All of it designed to be exactly what I would find appealing. He knew the right things to say because he was looking for someone like me specifically. A few weeks later, the police officer who had come to the door sat down with my family. He told us that the man who had called himself Stephen was actually wanted in connection with the molestation of 2 minors. One of them was 10 years old. He had slept in my room. My parents had been 20 feet down the hall. He had been in my house in the dark, and I had let him in. I agreed to testify against him. I was not going to let him continue doing what he had been doing. The other families involved did not come forward, which meant when the case went to trial, I was the only witness. He took a plea deal before it got that far. He received 1 year. 1 year for what he had done to children. I have never fully made peace with that number. A year after the trial ended, I started receiving instant messages from unknown screen names. Death threats, details about my life that could only have come from someone who had been watching me. What car I drove, what I wore to school, what my schedule looked like. They were detailed and specific and continued for weeks. I printed everything out and brought it to the school principal and the police. I filed a report. I never received another message. I do not know for certain it was him. I do not know what became of him after that. What I know is that I spent 2 years looking over my shoulder before I finally stopped expecting to see his face somewhere behind me. The second story is the one that took me the longest to be able to talk about, because it is not simply a story about being deceived. It is a story about 2 years of my life that were not real, and about how I did not find out until someone handed me the proof and I could not explain it away anymore. My name is Cameron. I was 16 years old when it started. I am going to tell you the truth about where I was emotionally at that point in my life, because it is the only way to understand how any of what followed was possible. I grew up in a rural part of the South. My parents were deeply religious. When they found out I was gay, they did not handle it the way I needed them to. For a period of time, I was not living at home. I was surviving on the floors and couches of friends who had more understanding parents. I was using substances to keep from feeling the weight of every day. I was in the worst mental state I had ever been in. I was also 16, and I desperately needed someone to tell me I was worth something. So I made a MySpace account. I clicked around and found a profile that caught my eye. His name was Jacob. He was from Maryland. He dressed in black. He looked exactly like the kind of person who might understand my particular combination of pain and personality. I sent him a message expecting nothing. He replied within a minute. That feeling I had when his message came in is hard to describe now. After months of feeling invisible to everyone who was supposed to care about me, someone I wanted to reach saw me and reached back. It felt like air. We talked for hours that first day, then the next day, then every day after that. We talked about music and feeling trapped and wanting something different. After about a week, he asked me out. I said yes without hesitating. A few days after that, he introduced me to his friend group online. There was his ex-boyfriend, Zachary, warm and thoughtful, the kind of person who wrote piano music and was too kind for his own good. There was Josie, a sharp, funny girl who became my closest friend almost immediately. There was the wider group they ran with a loose collection of people spread across Maryland who called themselves the elites, mostly suburban kids who drank too much and took themselves slightly too seriously. Over the following weeks, I fell in with this group completely. Josie and I talked on the phone every day. I fell for Zachary the more I talked to him. Eventually, Jacob seemed to sense it and told me he was okay with it and Zachary and I started dating. None of this set off any alarm bells for me. That is the part I have to sit with. What I want to tell you is what the next year looked like from the inside. Jacob was volatile. He would get drunk and do things that seemed unhinged. Twice he apparently abducted Zachary out of some obsessive jealousy and had to be physically retrieved by other people in the group. This became a pattern so regular that people around them treated it as routine. Someone would call and say Jacob had taken Zachary again, and the response from the group leader was basically, "Ah, not this again." I accepted that as normal. I do not know how to explain that to you except to say that when you are very young and very alone, and you have finally found something that feels like belonging, you accommodate things you should not accommodate because losing it feels worse than anything else. Then one night, Josie called me in a panic. She said Jacob had hired someone to come to my house and kill me. Not just me, my parents, my younger sister who was 8 years old. I want to stop here for a moment on that detail. My sister. She had nothing to do with any of this. She was 8. The idea that someone had sent a person to my house to hurt her cleared everything else out of my head instantly. Josie told me the man was already driving, that he had left Maryland hours ago, that I had at most 6 hours before he arrived. I will not go into the full detail of what I did that night. What I will tell you is that I was in my front yard at 4 in the morning behind a large oak tree with a shotgun borrowed from someone I trusted. And that when the man's car appeared on my street and he got out with a handgun at his side, I stepped out from behind that tree and made him understand very clearly that he had made a serious mistake in coming to my house. He got back in his car. He drove away. I do not think about that night in terms of being brave. I think about it in terms of being a 16-year-old kid who should never have been in that yard at 4 in the morning with a loaded weapon because a man from Maryland should never have been driving toward my house at all. The drama continued for another year. Jacob and his threats and his obsession with Zachary. Josie keeping me sane through all of it. Zachary getting sick a lung condition that worsened suddenly. His hospitalization. The fear of losing him. Then on February 14th, he died. Josie was the one who told me. I collapsed. I grieved in the way you grieve when you are 17 and it is your first real loss, and you have not yet built up the capacity to metabolize that kind of pain. I did not handle it well. I do not think anyone handles it well at that age. About 6 weeks later, I was out with friends late at night when Josie called. She told me Zachary was not dead. She said he had faked his death to protect himself from Jacob, that he was alive, that he wanted to talk to me. He got on the phone. I heard his voice. I do not have the right words for what happened inside me in that moment. The grief I had been carrying for 6 weeks crashing into something between joy and rage and confusion, so complete that I could not locate myself inside it. I put my phone through a wall. I did things I am not proud of. My mental state was not good. What happened next took several more months to fully understand. A friend sat me down and started pointing out things, inconsistencies in stories, details that did not line up when you placed them side by side, things that individually could be explained away, but together formed a pattern that had only one explanation. I started searching. I typed Josie's name and every email address I had ever seen from her into every social media platform I could find. What came back stopped me cold. Dozens of accounts, all connected to her email addresses, account after account under different names, Jacob, Zachary, every single person in the so-called elites. Prototype versions of the profiles, earlier drafts before she made the ones I knew. Her own photos appearing under names I had treated as real people for 2 years. Every person I had talked to, every voice on the phone, every conversation, all of it was her. There was no Jacob. There was no Zachary. There was no group. There was no elites. There was one girl sitting somewhere in Maryland playing a rotating cast of characters, talking to me through each one of them every single day for 2 years. The boyfriend I fell in love with was her. The best friend I talked to every day was her. The jealous ex, the gang, the piano music Zachary supposedly wrote, all of it was her. She played the piano. She was the one who paid Sean to come to my house with a gun. She was the one who orchestrated the fake death. All of it. Every single piece of it. For 2 full years, I confronted her. She laughed, genuine laughter, like something mildly funny had just happened at a dinner party. Years later, she moved to a town near mine. I ran into her. I sat down and listened to her explain herself for 8 hours. She said it started as a way to prank a girl who had bullied her in high school. She built a network of fake profiles to trick that girl into a fake online relationship and planned to reveal the truth and humiliate her. Then she started talking to me by accident, she said, and things got out of control. She said she fell in love with me. She said that is why it kept going. I do not know what to do with that. I have spent years not knowing what to do with that. Someone can claim they love you while also paying someone $500 to drive to your house and shoot your family. These things are not compatible with each other in any framework I know how to apply. What she took from me is not something that goes back. The years of not trusting people, the difficulty with closeness, the part of me that still waits for the reveal, still half expects that eventually the person I am talking to will turn out to be someone else entirely. She manufactured people for me to love and then took them away, over and over, systematically, because she needed the attention. I sometimes wonder how many other people she did it to before me and after. I have no way of knowing. 2 stories tonight. Tyler at 14, meeting a man who looked exactly like his photo and still was not safe to be near. And me at 16, building a world out of relationships that existed only on the other side of a screen, in the mind of one person who needed me to believe they were real. The danger is not always obvious. It does not always look wrong at first glance. Sometimes it looks like exactly what you needed. It knows what you are looking for, and it shows up wearing that. The thing Tyler's visitor got right was matching his picture. The thing Josie got right was matching everything I ever told her I needed. Both of them understood that the way to get close to someone is to study them first. Both of them studied us before we ever knew they existed. You cannot always protect yourself from that. You can be careful. You can move slowly. You can verify things and ask questions and pay attention to what does not add up. You can make sure that the people in your real life know who you are talking to online and where you are planning to go. But some of what happened to both of us, the core of it, was that we were young and lonely and needed something, and the wrong people knew exactly how to become that something. Tyler's visitor sat in his room in the dark 10 feet away from him while he slept. And my best friend, the person I trusted most in the world for 2 years, was a stranger the entire time. I hope you never find out what either of those realizations feels like from the inside. I genuinely hope that.